Lotte and the Food Farm, a dark Christmas story. It was Saturday the 2nd of December, and it was 7 minutes past 11, and Lotte and her two Russian employees, Igor and Sergei, were trying to prepare the food for the customers who might come here in the wee hours. But as usual, the result of Lotte's two subsidized employees was anything but good, to say the least. Their many high-coated rye breads looked like something made from old griddles of cold meats and greens that had been rummaged around and picked up from a moldy garbage can, and their roast pork was dry and tough as leather with soft pork rinds, and their gravy was all gray like vomit and with a corresponding smell. But that's how it went with everything the three made every day. But every day the customers came anyway and spent a lot of money to buy what they called food. But it was also because the so-called food subconsciously made the customers think that it was rubbish on the same level as themselves, and it also helped a lot that Lotte was a communist Democrat and was sympathetic towards every minority and also provided so much of the business's profits to charity that it could barely run. But it was also only because of her fanatical attitude towards Denmark's beloved minorities that she was one of those who was still allowed to run a food business in the country, and who, on top of that, got one free and subsidized employee after another from the corrupt minority-undermined municipality that collaborates with the rest of Denmark's traitors in suffocating and exterminating all people with the right mindset, which was 100% opposed of the country's insane demon Democrats. Denmark was seen as being one of the least corrupt countries in the world, but which in reality is one of the very worst in the world. This is a secret that can only be kept hidden, because Denmark only consists of Democrats that controls all the media, and in this way stops the truth from getting out to the real world and not just the fake staged world that the demon Democrat has fabricated through social media and more. It was Monday at 7 o'clock, and Igor and Sergei showed up at their work. It was snowy and -7 degrees, and the door to the kitchen was locked. About 15 minutes later, Lotte came running out of the farmhouse, which was right next door. She had overslept and was now so stressed out that she fell so that she landed flat on her back in the icy snow. Igor and Sergei, who were standing and about to freeze, heard her complaint and began to walk quietly into the yard where Lotte was still lying, complaining. Igor grabbed one of her arms and quickly pulled her up. A cracking sound was followed by a great painful scream from Lotte, which was so loud that you could hear it half a kilometer away. Igor was so shocked that he completely forgot to hold on to Lotte, after which she quickly fell back straight onto her back and again let out a loud scream, and then lay down, making semi-unconscious noises full of pain. Sergei opened the door to the farmhouse while Igor grabbed her arms and dragged her into the hallway and took the keys out of her pocket and went out and closed the door and kicked the snow around a little so that no tracks could be seen. Then the two went to the kitchen and unlocked the door, went in and switched on the many neon lights that didn't quite work and was blinking. Igor and Sergei stood for 7 minutes talking about what to do with her, after which they agreed on a solution. Igor, who was the bigger of the two, went over to the farmhouse and opened the front door where Lotte was still lying and was almost waking up again. Igor stood over her and leaned forward as he said, "This is for your own good," and punched her so that her light went out and left a proper imprint on her forehead. He picked her up on his neck and went into the kitchen with her, where Sergei had made room for her on the large stainless work table. They put a strap around her feet and up around a beam in the ceiling, then they lifted her up and put a big clean bucket under her head. Sergei opened a drawer in the table next to him and took out a sharp, medium-sized knife, and then went to Lotte and grabbed her hair, pulled her head back, put the sharp knife on her throat, and quickly cut it so that the knife half disappeared into the entire throat. Blood gushed from her throat as she thrashed around. "She's not dead," said Sergei, to which Igor replied, "Don't worry, she will be," and little by little she stopped thrashing around and about. 10 minutes later, the last blood was pumped out of her body. The two communists hoisted her down from the ceiling and put her back on the large stainless work table, where they fastened the strap around her hands and hoisted her back up into the ceiling. Sergei again took the medium-sized sharp knife and cut open the bottom of her stomach, after which all her entrails fell out into a large tub almost entirely by themselves. The two first set about cutting into large pieces, just as Sergei and Igor used to do with animals when they still lived in Russia, and afterwards they set about cutting fillet pieces and chopping mincemeat and much more, and the most of the bones they put through a bone crusher and mixed with the minced meat. They were in a bit of a hurry, as they had to finish by opening time, which today was 1 o'clock. They thought most of the meat looked a little too dry to use right away, so they decided to put it in a brine and marinade for tomorrow. For today, the two communists had decided to take some of the freshly minced meat and make a lot of mashed potatoes with meat sauce for the customers. It was 1 o'clock, and the first two customers of the day came through the door. They first looked around a bit and then went to the shop counter where the two Russians were standing. "So what would you recommend today?" asked one of the two customers. "We would recommend that you try the dish of the day, which is homemade mashed potatoes with a homemade meat sauce with a little chili." The two bought 2 trays of the day's dish and then set off again. More customers came, and when it was almost closing time again, the mashed potatoes with meat sauce were sold out. The next day, the customers came back asking if they have more of the great gravy with mashed potatoes. It was the best they had ever tasted, they said. "Unfortunately, we don't have that today, but instead we have some really good new fried, homemade breaded nuggets that have been left in a brine overnight." The customers bought again until there were no more nuggets left, and within a week almost all of the new meat were sold, and now there was only 1 large liver left, and Igor and Sergei chose to make it into a cream Christmas liver paste. That same evening, Lotte's husband and her 2 sons, Hansi and Fritz, came home from Billund together with Lotte's father, whom they persuaded to celebrate what they thought would be his last Christmas, as he was very ill. They entered the house and couldn't find Lotte anywhere, so the father went into the kitchen and asked Igor and Sergei if they had seen Lotte anywhere, to which they replied, "No, it's been a while since we've seen her." "Well, I guess she'll show up soon." The father asked if there was anything good left for dinner, to which Igor replied, "We only have these 5 liver pâté that have just come out of the oven." "Then give me 2 of them," said the father. Igor gave them to him, and he went back into the house where Lotte's father and 2 children were sitting at the kitchen table waiting for some food after a long day. The father put the 2 hot liver pastes on the table. "Oh my God, it smells so good," said all 4 of them. The father Niels sat down, and the 3 of them set about spreading a piece of rye bread with the warm, freshly baked Christmas liver pâté. "It is the best liver pâté I have ever tasted," said Lotte's father. "You're quite right," the other 3 said almost at once. It was so good that when they left the kitchen table again, both trays with liver pâté were completely empty.